Hi, everyone. Welcome to Wolfer TV. I'm Carmen Tanner Slaughter, and tonight we have with us Leesa Cross Smith. We were just discussing our tea drinking, so we may go back to that later in the chat. I do want to introduce Leesa before we get started. She is a homemaker and the author of two short story collections, Every Kiss of War and So We Can Glow, which I have the hardcover from last year, but it just came out in paperback in what, a couple of weeks ago?
Yeah, two
Yeah.
weeks ago.
So it is now available in hardcover and paper and ebook. So grab that up. And I think it's also available on Audible.
Yes.
And then she had her debut novel, which I have on my e-device, Whiskey and Ribbons, which was one of my favorite books in my top five of 2018. And I read
Thank
about
you.
100 books that year. So that's pretty much very, very high on my list. And then tonight we are going to be chatting about this lovely new book, This Close to Okay, which is not actually out until next Tuesday. So we're getting a little sneak preview chat with her, but it is available for pre order. So go ahead and get it so your copies will arrive on Tuesday so you can immediately start reading because you're not going to want to put this book down, I promise. A little bit about Leesa. Her work has appeared in Poets and Writers, Oxford American, Best Small Fictions, and many other publications. Her writing has been nominated for multiple fiction awards, and her name is always found on the notable list every year that she has a publication. She lives in Kentucky with her husband and their two teenagers. So, welcome, Leesa. I'm so glad you're
Hi.
here. I've been very excited about talking to you. I know that another thing you say, I think it's on your website, that you're also a cozy advocate. So I was
Yeah.
like, saw your little steaming mug of tea and had to talk about that a little bit. And I was like, I'm almost gonna do this interview in my pajamas because we're having like this close to okay night here in Georgia. It's all rainy and windy, and I was like, maybe I should just put on my pajamas and like wrap up in a blanket and have my mug of tea to
Yes.
kind of go
It's
along with
always
the book.
okay. It's that is always welcome. Yeah, it's always okay.
But I wanted to talk a little bit about sort of your evolution as a writer before we get into the book. How early did you accept that you were a writer and like really focus on it with the intent of getting published?
Wow, it's something I always wanted to do, but it didn't feel like I was allowed to do it. So that's usually, I like to always start with that when someone asks me a question, even like this, because it's just true for me. I always wanted to be a writer, but I didn't know how to do it, and I didn't feel like I was allowed to do it, and I didn't think it was a thing that I could really do. But I'm also stubborn. So I just decided that regardless, I was gonna read as much as I could and try to write. And so when I went to college, I majored in English and literature, just so I could read and write as much as I wanted. Took a couple creative writing classes, and when I graduated from college, I got a job writing obituaries because then I felt like I was doing something practical with my desire to write and with my knowledge,
Yes.
what I knew about English and grammar and literature. I wanted to put that to practical use. So I was thinking, oh, I could work at the newspaper and do something like that and do something practical. And I would write short stories and stuff sometimes and begin novels and stuff, but I didn't start actually trying to get things published and write towards publishing until I was done with college, had my babies, and my babies were almost in kindergarten. They were both going to school pretty much full time is when I would, when I sort of reevaluated what I wanted to do because I wasn't just a stay at home mom without going outside and going to work every day. So it was then that it clicked over and I was like, what would happen if I tried to write a short story and finish it? What would happen if I submitted the short story to this place or this place? And it kind of started that way, like, oh, what would happen? And now
Yeah.
here we are.
Right. So I think it's so interesting because there's actually, from what I know about your work, you've done short stories, flash fiction, essays, and then, of course, the novels. But I feel like there's nothing that you haven't touched. And even with, I was going to ask you about, did you think about doing screenplays in a more in depth way? Because even in So We Can Glow, there's the one story that's like a one act play. And of course, there's some elements of screenwriting in and playwriting in This Close
Hmm.
to Okay. So, is that something that you would ever pursue after like doing novels, or if we get like an adaptation to screen, would you want to be
Yeah, that'd be awesome.
responsible for? Yeah.
Yeah, the format is hard for me. The format is difficult, so that's usually why I don't get too far with that.
Hmm.
Just literally like center this at the page and make this all caps and then put it space. I find it too restricting, but
Yeah.
I'm sure I could figure it out
Yeah.
if I spend more time on it.
Right.
But yeah, no, I would love to do something like that one day for sure.
Yeah, I always have great ideas for movies, but I'm like somebody else needs to write the screenplay because I'm like you, I'm daunted by the structure. I'm like, I'm not going to
Yeah,
remember where I'm supposed to have a parenthetical and how do you do, so I get
yeah.
that as far as the structure goes. So let's talk about This Close to Okay, and I'll just start with the opening scene. So, for those of you who aren't aware, the book opens with like a rainy night, and Tallie is driving, and she sees a guy about to literally jump off a bridge. And because she is a therapist, she's like, "I'm not going to lose him, even though he's not my client." So she gets out and she starts talking to him, and then things start to unfold over the weekend. Which I won't give away too much. I want to have a very spoiler-free conversation,
Hmm.
but I'm curious, did that scene come to you first, or did you have an idea of what you wanted to do with the book and then work backwards? Because it drops us right in the middle of like, this is going to be an intense story.
Right. Yeah. No, that's a really great question. Thank you for it. Yeah. And that scene came to me first, so I didn't have any idea for a book. I just had that scene in my head, and the book was born from that. And that's what happens to me. Sometimes it'll just be an image, and then a whole entire story or a whole entire book sort of comes out of that. But yeah. When I made a note in my phone years and years ago that said, "Woman sees man about to jump from bridge, stops him, brings him home or takes him home," and they
Right.
kind of sat there for you know a couple months or a year, I can't remember, until it became something else. But I started right there, and I haven't taken, I'm not real big on a whole lot of writing advice and stuff like that. But I did read something one time about how you should start as close to the end as possible, and so I
Yeah.
try to do that. I definitely try to do that in my books. Books I want to sell. If I'm just writing
Yeah.
for myself, I can do whatever.
Right.
Books I'd like to sell to a publisher, I do try to start right there so that you're hooked from the first line, really. Yeah.
Yeah. And even with like, I trust you as a writer because I've read your other work, and I was like, what is she going to do to us? Like, I just didn't know. And you're kind of like, Tallie, are you sure about this? Like, but of course, the story unfolds and and you feel very comfortable with the decisions that she makes when
Hmm.
she starts to talk to him at the bridge and the way it goes. But I really love the fact that however you were able to do it, you made us feel okay with her making the decision that she made. And then as it started to flow, we weren't anxious so much. There was tension and there was anxiety about how some other things would turn out, but it wasn't like I sat there in fear the whole time about what he might do or what
Right.
might happen between the two of them. So I thought that was just really lovely because that type of a premise could just kind of make you think, is this going to turn into a serial killer book? What is happening right now? But again, as I trust you as a writer, so I knew it would be okay. Um,
Well,
the
thank you.
major
It's such a high compliment. Thank you.
You're welcome. The majority of the action for both Whiskey and Ribbons and This Close to Okay, it sort of just takes place over a short span of time, like a long
Mhm.
weekend, and then of course a weekend in this book. Um, do you think that your ability to sort of compact all of this really powerful plot into just a short span of time is sort of a result of your short story writing and your flash fiction writing? Because I know some of your stories are like two sentences, but
Mhm.
they but it's like start, finish, and you got a full thing there. So I was just really curious if you think that those roots and the fact that you started with that
Mhm.
kind of help you put so much into just a short span of time in your novels.
You know what? I've got to be honest. I've never thought about it that way, but I love the way you. I've never thought about that. I love that. That's really beautiful and interesting. And yeah, you might be onto something. I don't know.
Yeah.
It doesn't go through my mind. I just really love these that take place of, like, I like it when they give you the time at the beginning of the movie.
Yeah.
You know, they have 24 hours to do something, or episodes of TV shows where you know that it's going to just, you know, from the morning to when the sun goes down.
Right.
I just really like that. I like that, like, forced intimacy. Like in Whiskey and Ribbons, all these things they could have been avoiding and actually actively and aggressively almost have been avoiding for the past 6 months. Well, now they can't really just run out. Now they are actually in the same house circling each other. And it's like, okay, now we're going to have to talk about it. Yeah. And that's what I did with Tallie in this situation. When she meets Emmett, his name is Emmett, when she meets him on the bridge, a short amount of time, and she is looking at it from the point of view of thinking, let me just sort of distract him. Let me see if I can keep him busy this weekend. Of course, you know, he's a grown man. She can't force him to do anything, but I can probably convince him to hang out with me for a couple of days and, you know, kind of just keep him hanging on for a little bit until we see what he really needs. And so it made sense. So in both Whiskey and Ribbons and This Close to Okay, it made a lot of sense for me to take these short amount of times when things are happening in the present tense. But then also we do a sort of, like, in Whiskey and Ribbons, we do a lot of zooming out and getting all this background information. This Close to Okay, we don't do as much of that. It really is just all kind of happening right there. I don't really use flashback a lot, or I took out almost all the flashbacks. Like, you get information, but, you know, all of Tallie's flashbacks, you get some of his. Like, I mean, my book didn't even come out till next week, and I'm already like, I think, but yeah,
no, you're correct.
So you're kind of having this force, you know that she meets him on Thursday night. So then we have the next day, and she's like, well, what about this? Okay, what about this tomorrow? And we know that eventually they're going to have to go back to their real life. Right. And so I think it helps the reader to know that, you know, that the things are going to be motoring and keeping going on. And also for Tallie, I think that's the reason she was able to make a decision like that, to be like, well, it's just for tonight. That's what she's thinking. You know, this is not for forever. And for him too, it'd be like, okay, but the idea of this very long time is too stressful for me right now. Let's just have dinner. How about that? Let's have coffee. Okay, let's have dinner. Okay, let's just spend one night talking and then see where we go from there.
Yeah. So about the talking, they really open up to each other so much more than you would expect. But then the situation that they're in, they kind of don't have a choice. And of course, she's leading him, trying to figure out how she can help him. But one of the things that I loved about it is how they both extended so much grace to each other, even though they started out obviously as strangers. But within that first night, they established this, okay, we trust each other. We're going to work through this together. And I love that, because there are people that you come across in life that you have that instant connection where you feel like it is okay for me to give this much of myself to a person. And then, of course, they've both experienced, you know, some betrayals. And so the fact that there was enough of the connection between the two of them to say, okay, I'm going to go ahead and open up. I thought it was just really lovely. Did you ever think about handling their interaction differently, or were you just completely committed to moving that way from, you know, their first meeting?
Yeah, I love what you had to say about that. I knew that they were going to have to, I mean, obviously they're going to have to trust each other. Obviously, you know, Tallie is a woman and she's inviting a strange man back to her home. So, you know, the reader has to just go with me there. I realize that that's not an everyday common occurrence. Although I would also argue that people do all kinds of things that I personally wouldn't do all the time. You know, people who are selling things online and have people come to their house to pick them up, or, you know, meet someone to date online and meet them for the first time and whatever. Everyone has their own, like, boundaries or their own things, and it's different for it's different for everyone, especially different for men, because they're not, you know, usually in the same position that women can put themselves in. But I knew from jump they were going to have to trust each other in a really special way, and just like you said, they were going to have to see something in the other one that convinced them to share their heart. Both of them decide to do that sort of at the same time. And Tallie's like, well, I'm gonna, I have her saying there, she's gonna open up, and then if I open up, I think maybe he'll open up. And she really feels like he needs to open up, through the course of their conversations. And that's why it's funny to me, of course, because I'm writing it, but through the course of their conversations where she's really like trying to see what's going on with him. And, she drops a couple of her things in there, and he's like, hold up. Let's go back to that.
Right. Wait a minute now. Yeah.
Hold on. This is all about me. Yeah, sounds like sounds like there's more that you want to say about that. I knew that was the way it was going to have to be, because that was the book I was writing. The book I was writing about is about two strangers who meet and open up to each other over the course of a weekend. So yeah, I needed them to do that, but I also needed to make it as believable as possible. I mean, I believe that fiction is fiction, art is art. So I don't need it to exactly mirror real life. I don't talk about, to tediously every single thing they do, but I needed it to be realistic enough so where you could think like, this woman who usually makes really good decisions is trusting her instinct here.
Yeah.
And, I'm wanting you to trust that she's right, that she can feel like she can be safe doing this, and that there will be some, that there will be some sort of positive outcome from her doing this. She's really, she's willing to take that chance.
Right. So in Whiskey and Ribbons, of course, dealt with grief and love, and then this book explores mental health as well as some varying forms of grief and also love. And then of course, as we just talked about, there's a lot of faith that they have to put into themselves and each other in order to like develop this relationship and like work toward their goal. So like faith is a huge element of your stories, and I know that you're a Christian and a preacher's kid, and so does that, it can't not influence your writing, but I love how you make it very clear in your writing that you are a person of faith, but it's not ever preachy, and it sort of shows in the way you treat your characters and the way they treat each other that you have the same care for them and the same love for them, and I guess your readers too, that sort of godly, God of all things love. Like, even though you sort of put us through the ringer, you also give us some very reassuring and comforting moments along the way. And then of course, by the time we reach the end, we feel good about things. So I just felt like maybe inadvertently that flows through you into your writing because you are a person of faith. And while your books aren't like classified obviously as like Christian fiction or anything like that, I noticed it in Whiskey and Ribbons, and then I noticed it a lot in This Close to Okay, that at some point your characters always sort of talk about that, even if it's an offhand remark or if it's just like quoting like a line of scripture. And I think that's great because your characters are always just everyday people, but I love that sort of agape love like shines through. And so I feel like it has to be a result of you being like a PK and being a Christian. Because, I could be wrong, but that's just me. So do you agree? Right. Or is that like something you've even been conscious of, or is it just like, oh yeah, you're right?
Yeah, no, thank you. That's put really beautifully. No, I definitely think that you're right. I mean, my dad started preaching when I was about 3, so I grew up under the umbrella of that. But I'm not one of those people, and there are plenty of people like that, and I understand those people too. But I'm not one of those people who resented that at all. Religion, it was just it's Jesus for me, and less religion and the rules and the actual church building and those sort of things. And that's obviously a longer conversation. But for me, Jesus always made sense, and I just love Jesus. And so many of my characters just love Jesus, and it's a part of their lives, but it's not something I'm talking about on every page, of course. I would never be classified as a Christian book. Even though people who have a strong aversion to it, maybe, but my books are like too horny to just be Christian books.
Yeah.
I mean, because my girls like do not deny themselves their real feelings and desire, and I write about female desire a lot, which is also in the Bible too, for people who really read their Bible and have ever read a Song of Songs. But but then it's like when you have, for me, when I make a character have have faith, or specifically Christian faith, yeah, it just comes out normally. I don't think it's preachy either. I mean, she's certainly, so Tallie, when she's in, for Tallie, with her personality and the character, she is, when she meets a man who wants to take his life, it just is automatic. She's just like, I'm going to pray for this man. So for her, it's just automatic. Like, I am going to call upon someone, something, some spirit bigger than me right now, because I can't do this. I need Jesus right now to help me with this, because this, what is happening, is bigger than something I can do. I'm a firm believer in that. Unabashedly, like, out there with my feelings about Jesus. No, I'm not keeping that a secret or hiding that light at all. But also, that being said, not every character I write is Christian. Not every character I'm talking is thinking about that or talking about that. I have Tallie be very careful, asking him about, hey, is it okay for me to ask you about this? Or is it okay for me to talk to you about this? She's not just barging up to people and doing that. And also, like so many characters in the Bible, she is very flawed. She's not even, everyone is. And she mentions that. It's not like she's coming to him like, hey, because I'm a Christian, or because I, think that Jesus is Son of God, now I know everything, so just do what I do because I'm perfect. She's just like, I'm kind of losing it, and I need a break this weekend too. That's her whole thing. Right. I can still love Jesus and need a drink, or need a nap, or a curse, or just kind of want to check out for a little bit. It's human. It's very human. And believing in God for some people, that's very human too. We look for something else, whatever that is. If you get down deep enough into your spirit, you're like, well, I know I can't do this. Can anyone else help?
There's a friend of mine, she said something a while ago, and she was like, God is God and we are not. And so that's like a very good reminder to just, like, it's cliche, but let go and let God. And it's very clear that is sort of what happens, especially in this novel. So one of the things that I love the most about your writing is how you don't hit people over the head so much with race, or I'm a Black writer, or like, obviously you're a Black woman, but you don't have that.
Like, you can see now. See, there we go. We can see. Okay,
but it's not like, hello, I'm going to talk to you about the African American experience. Like, it's just that the characters are people who are having experiences, and they may happen to be African American, or however it plays out with their backgrounds. But I just love how you don't get so bold about it, and they're just going along like in their everyday lives, as we are wont to do, regardless of what our skin color is.
I know.
So, and I think that was one of the things with Whiskey and Ribbons. When I first read about it, I was like, wait a minute, I couldn't, at first I wasn't sure. I was like, are they Black? Are they white? It doesn't matter. But it wasn't one of those things. And sometimes, we get a description of like, her brown cheeks, or whatever. And so you're like, oh, okay. But I think that's just so great that you do that, because the human experience is the human experience.
Right.
And I love the way you just let your characters flow through their lives without it being this big proclamation of, who they are and all those things. And even when you address like the issues that we all face, you do it in a way that's like, okay, I'm making a point here, but again, it's not this preachy, or like, this is the moment when she makes a big bold statement about systemic racism and oppression. It's just so natural. And so a lot of things are like revealed through the dialogue, especially with This Close to Okay. There's a lot of talking between them. And of course, you do a beautiful job with description too, which I'll get to. But a lot of this, especially the first few pages, few chapters, it's a lot of talking. So they're like revealed to us through their conversation, and it doesn't really matter what they look like or anything like that. But that's
Right.
just one of the things that I think is sort of a benchmark, I guess, for like your books anyway, and for other people who are trying to like, because there's this conversation about who can write this story and who can
Right.
tell this story. So I love books like yours where that's not such a focus, and we can just get into who the people are and
Yeah.
experience the book, along with them without having to really worry about all those other things. So, like, I appreciate that so much. I wanted to tell you that because,
Thank you.
I mean, of course, like growing up, there weren't a lot of books that had little black girls on the cover, and even into high school. So it was really in, college and early adulthood
Hmm.
where, you'd walk in and there would be the African American fiction section. And I'd
Right.
be
Right.
like, well, it's just fiction,
Right.
And so I think that's one of the wonderful things about your novels is that anybody can read them and find something within the characters that they can connect to because it is just like that basic humanity. But a lot of people aren't able to do that. So it's just a
Right.
huge thing that you have been able to accomplish with your books, and I love it. So
Wow. Well, thank you. I really do appreciate that. And yeah, I just love, it's funny that you said that because I was talking to my publicist who is amazing, and we were kind of saying the same thing on the phone this week. And she gave me one of my favorite compliments ever because she was like, you know what I love about you? You just write books.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
And like instead of like trying to make them this thing, and that's such a high compliment for me specifically, because there are a lot of books that are dealing with race and writing about race, and those people do that, and that's what they do, and they do it really well.
yeah,
I've never been trying to do that. I think of Miss Toni Morrison saying, if there's a book you want to see that hasn't been written yet, you should write it. And I took that advice in my head a long time ago because, like you said, when we were growing up, I would see books with little black girls on the cover, and they were always slaves. It was always marching for
mm-hmm,
Martin Luther King. And I just wanted to read a story about black girl who wanted to be a princess, black girl who, lost her dog. And then Jessie from Babysitter's Club, I remember I was like, I love that there's a black character in here, and she's just a babysitter.
yeah,
Like the rest of the girls too. And so
yeah,
that's what I wanted to write. I'm not I mean, you can tell that Tallie's black woman on the cover. It's
mm-hmm,
not something I'm trying to have. My picture's in there too. Big picture of me. I'm
yeah,
black. My mama's black. My daddy's black. I'm black.
mm-hmm,
But the thing is, I'm not talking about on every page. No,
yeah,
absolutely not. It's not what the book is about.
right.
And so like what you were saying, when they go for coffee, Tallie looks at him and she's like, I can't imagine there's a lot of us where you're from. It's
Right.
like that's how we talk. We'd be like, when you go somewhere, you'd be like, do they have any us in there? It's like that's how black people talk to each other. So that for me was all we needed to say about that at first, because
Right.
that kind of got that out of the way. But yeah, I think it is confusing for some people, like you said, with Whiskey and Ribbons, with the casting for the audiobook. At first, I think it was a little bit confusing because they were like, are these people black or are these people black or white?
Yeah.
And yeah, they're black. I just didn't need to talk about it at first. I mean, where in the world would I put that? And why would I put that? Why would I start the beginning of my book with something like it makes
Exactly.
absolutely no sense? No.
So yeah. So your mastery of language and description is just so strong. Like I have 166 notes like highlighted in like the
Wow.
e-version
Thank
of
you.
This Close to Okay. And I'm like, how does she do this? Like, I don't, because, we're going to run out of time. So I don't want to spend a lot of time reading it. People just buy the book and read it for yourselves. But I'm like, some of the sentences, I just like stop and I'm like holding my chest and I'm like, oh my gosh, how did she do that? And like, I know I read an interview, someone asked you like about synesthesia and we're like, are you a synesthete? Because there's always like colors and smells and like people are described that way. And I know you said, no, I'm not a synesthete, but it's just the way that it comes out. And I think this novel in particular is very, very cinematic. Like I'm sitting here with my fingers crossed that maybe one day we'll see it on, TV or
Yeah, well,
movie or
thank you. I'll
whatever.
cross on with you.
Yeah, because
for sure.
it's so great. And then of course some of the parentheticals in the book, I was like, what is she doing with this? And then we kind of get an answer later on of why it's written that way. But
Yeah.
it just the way you use descriptions establishes such a great mood. Like you feel like you are right there in like every page, every scene. You know exactly what the room looks like. You know
Wow.
exactly what the atmosphere is like the Halloween party. Oh my gosh, I'm just
Mhm.
like I'm at the Halloween party. Like what costume what do I have on? You know. And so
Oh, I love that. That's my favorite. Thank you for telling me that. I love that.
yeah,
You were totally okay. You're totally at this Halloween party. You are.
yeah. And so I'm like, when you are writing your characters, do you envision like people who would play those roles if they were ever taken to the big screen, or is that just so far out of your realm of thought when you're writing? Because I know some people do, they'll do like the vision board and they'll cut out, the photos of the person that they think looks like this character. Do
Yeah,
you do
yeah.
that at all?
I do sometimes, but I do that part just for fun. It doesn't really make those things don't really make it into my drafts
Mhm.
really, if that makes sense. So
Yeah.
yeah, I do have secret Pinterest boards that I'll use with my that I'll use with my team later when we get to talking about cover ideas and stuff.
Mhm.
So I'll save things, collect things for cover idea purposes. I do sometimes have pictures of actors and actresses and stuff, but that doesn't get into it's like an after the fact thing. It
Yeah.
doesn't actually get into like I'm not looking at a picture and then thinking, with the exception of so for Whiskey and Ribbons, Eamon, and it's not a spoiler, he's killed in the first line of the book. It's on the back of the book, but he's a police officer killed in the line of duty. But he was Mekhi Phifer. I started writing
Mhm.
this book such a long time ago. I was watching so much ER that it was like Mekhi Phifer, like in my head was like like I would think of someone like so for him, his voice specifically, I love his speaking voice specifically.
Yeah.
I would think of for Eamon, but it would just be like little stuff like that really. I mean, I like thinking about it. I like when people tell me um there's a story in So We Can Glow, and I have a write about a gentleman named Marco, and I saw a picture of Oscar Isaac, and I told when I told everyone on my Instagram stories, like, it's okay if you read Marco and think and imagine him as Oscar Isaac.
Yeah.
Like, I'm okay with that. Everyone's okay with that. That's as close as I'll get to actually doing something like that. But I like thinking about it.
Yeah.
But when it comes to writing them, they just exist in my head as people I can't even though it would be my job to be able to explain them to you further, I can't really. I just see them in my head.
I got you. Yeah, I was just curious because I know there's some people who go like with these really elaborate,
Yeah,
like
yeah,
you see their wall and it's like all different colors of like post-it notes, and there's the picture of
yeah,
the person and like the string, and they're looping it from it. So I just, I think that would drive me crazy, but I didn't know
yeah,
if that was like part of your process.
yeah.
Um, so with this book, of course, there's quite a few shockers. Like a lot of stuff happens, and like I
Hmm.
said, no spoilers, but wow. And I felt so protective of all the characters, and
Hmm.
I, except for Joel, I didn't feel protective of Joel. But
So what about but what about his ponytail?
oh my gosh, his
Did you see?
ponytail. I was like, okay, Joel, whatever. Shoe
Hmm.
fly, but he served his purpose, and I'm good with that. Um, but even until the very last page, there's a little bit of anxiety, but there's always like this hope. And then of course the ending, I won't give away anything, but like I'm not sure what I wanted to happen. But I like to think that my interpretation is the way it happened, and I know you left that open on purpose. But do you think that at any point there would be like a reason for us to revisit Tallie and Emmett?
Oh wow. And I don't hate it. I don't hate thinking about it.
Yeah.
I love them.
Hmm.
I love them so much, and I definitely don't hate thinking about that. I
Okay.
also am going to need you to email me your thoughts about this
Okay.
so we can talk.
Yes, I will talk to you about that after. But yeah, I really like. I was thinking like, do I like the way this happened or do I
Hmm.
not? But this is kind of what I want. But
Hmm.
Yeah, that would make sense. So yes, we can email about that.
I love it. Yes, please, please, because I want to hear it and I want to be able to talk to you without worrying about spoilers. So yeah,
Yeah.
anytime you want to do that, my inbox is open.
So we're like running out of time, but I do
Okay.
want to ask a couple of more questions. I know music is like music and other books and film, and like I love how you have your pages and pages of inspirations at the end of so we
Oh,
can gloat like all the
yeah.
but and I know like the Jimmy Eat World song, the middle, you always, I read about that, and I noticed that you were talking about Sam Cooke, and
Oh,
like
yeah.
you're like thank
Oh,
you, thank you, thank you. So do you listen to music while you're writing, or is it just like certain, and of course there's certain songs interspersed throughout the book, but are you listening to music while you're writing, or is it just certain songs sort of propel you to write certain things to move the story along?
yeah, I can't listen to music with words while I'm writing. But I'll listen to like trip hop or electronic music or scores from movies I love and stuff like that. Yeah, as long as it doesn't have words, I can listen to it. I usually just write to the quiet though. I usually don't
Yeah.
listen to any music at all. Yeah, with something like that. So with Sam Cooke, there's I'll do that a lot of times to put to let the reader into their personality or to find a common ground.
Hmm.
I can't imagine. I've never met anyone who doesn't love Sam Cooke's
Right.
voice. I don't know if I'd want to be around that person for very long because I feel like something is wrong. So then for me, when they're getting to know each other and there's a part and this is not spoilery, but there's a part where she's turning the radio and she's like, let me know when to stop, and
Hmm.
Bring It On Home to Me by Sam Cooke comes on. He's like, stop here, this is good. And she's like, I know, I love this one too. And it's
Yeah.
kind of like, hey, I may not know you that well, you may not know me that well, but we can agree on this, right? Sam Cooke,
Hmm.
right? I
Hmm.
mean, we can agree on this.
Yeah.
And so I'll do that sometimes with the characters. And then, I have them talk about what kind of music they like. She plays songs for him, when they're on the bridge, because, she's like, oh, okay, let's
Hmm.
distract any distraction. Let's listen to this. What do you think about this song? Good, bad? What do you think?
Right.
Yeah. So then, I it's so generic to say, but obviously, music is a huge part of my life. I love it. And so I don't know how to not incorporate that into my books. It just happens. And I wrote Whiskey and Ribbons as a piece of music, really. And so that is a totally different thing. But yeah, it really helps me structure my books
Hmm.
and give my characters all this stuff about them that, the reader usually can instantly connect to.
Yeah. I was just curious if you actually listened to it while you were writing, because I know how much you love it. And I think,
Yeah.
sometimes depending on what I'm doing, I will listen to certain songs like for a certain scene, but I can't like constantly listen to music. I have to turn it off, or like you said, put
Right.
on classical or something like that. So
Yeah. Yeah.
um I know you love sports. I think you probably love baseball the best,
I do.
but I'm a huge NCAA basketball fan, and I am a Kentucky Wildcat fan.
Okay. Well,
So
let me figure out how to turn this off because I'm
I
done
knew
talking to you.
that gonna happen.
No,
I was like, this is gonna be the one thing upon which we disagree,
it's
because
true.
I figure you are probably a Cardinal fan.
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
I will tell you that the only time I cheer against the Cardinals is when they're playing the Wildcats.
Okay. Okay.
So if
I
they're
accept
playing
it.
anybody else, then we're on the same page. But I went to Ruck for the first time a few years ago, and it was like I'm at the mothership, and I got all teary
Yeah.
eyed, So my next like sports bucket list is to go to like Battle of the Bluegrass.
Yeah.
So when that happens, I'll make sure to let you know I'm coming to the area, and we can have like a staring at each other match, and I'll have
Absolutely.
I'll have on blue and you have on red, and it'll be
Well, I will tell you this, unless because my daughter's going to be heading off to college soon, and so that's the thing. If my daughter decides to go to UK, then I will turn myself into a UK fan because I just obviously I'm crazy about my little girl,
yeah.
and I would be crazy about wherever she went. So that would be the thing. My dad's a huge UK fan, so I kind of
Yeah.
grew up, but my mom is not.
All right.
So I can see myself getting there, and I'm much more open to it now than I was like a handful of years ago. So
Yeah.
you might see me sitting on your side too if my little girl goes.
Okay, awesome. Good to know. I had to wear my blue tonight. I was like, I wonder if she's even gonna notice. But so I'm gonna like sort of wrap up here with
Okay.
and maybe we can do like a little Q&A and put it on the website,
Mhm.
because I've got lots more questions. So But the last thing I want to talk about is what is next. I know that you've already sold Half Blown Rose,
Yeah.
and that will come out in 2022.
Yes.
So if you
Yes.
just want to tell us a little bit about that, and then we'll say goodnight.
Yeah. So my next novel to be my fifth book, my third novel. It's called Half Blown Rose. It's going to be out in spring/summer 2022. It's about a woman named Vincent who decides to move to Paris and live in the apartment that her parents own. They are not there, but after her husband's betrayal, she has grown children, and she just needs a break from this man that she's been married to for about 25 years. And she goes to Paris and teaches art. And in her classes, she meets a young man who's the same age as her son. And things get a little more than friendly between Vincent and this young gentleman. His name is Lou. And yeah, that they have some Parisian adventures.
I know I saw that the pitch was like how Stella got her groove back meets Before Sunrise, and I was like, oh yeah, I'm totally in. So.
I know, I was sold on that too. I was
Yeah.
like, how would I want this written to where I would want to buy it immediately? And that's what I thought of. And that really is what it is. There's lots of romance and trains and lots of French and lots of a really strong, beautiful woman in her 40s just doing what she wants for a little bit. Yeah, absolutely.
So thank you so much for joining us tonight and chatting about this. I don't want to, I didn't want to talk too much about it because it's kind of hard to talk about it without spoiling it. But I definitely want everyone watching to go out, buy Whiskey and Ribbons if you haven't read it, buy So We Can Glow. Every Kiss of War is only available in Kindle, but I'm hoping that one day I'll get my hands on like a real copy for my collection. And pre-order This Close to Okay so it arrives on your doorsteps next week because everybody's going to be talking about this book. So
that's awesome. Yeah.
Thank you again, Leesa. Thank you, all the viewers out there who are watching, and everybody have a good night.
Thank you.
You're welcome.